Welcome back students to your English class. Today we will be continuing with the story which we had started in our previous class, that was The Little Girl. Students, if you remember, then you would have realized, or shall I say, let us go back a little bit and let us revise what we had studied in our last class. So if I am not wrong, in the last class we were introduced into the family of Kezia, the protagonist of our story, and also the titular little girl. And not only Kezia, we were also introduced to her family members, primarily the father of Kezia, the father from whom she was petrified of. We also got a little bit a glimpse of the mother and the grandmother, where we found that the mother seems to be a sort of non-offensive, supporting kind of non-offensive type of person who definitely follows every word of the father as the head of the family. And we got to know about the most kind creature, shall I say, the most kind family member of Kezia, and that was a grandmother. And we got through the instances like when she is trying very hard to make sure that Kezia has a good childhood where she is able to interact with her parents freely. And not only that, we also got a glimpse of how she cared about Kezia, and in order to mend the relationship between the father and the daughter, she was the one who had suggested Kezia to actually go ahead and gift something for her father's surprise birthday, actually as a surprise. And it is very ironical that even though the grandmother wanted what was best for both of them, but she ended up suggesting Kezia in doing something, even though she was not directly involved, even though the grandmother was not directly involved. But we got to see at the end of paragraph number 8 on page number 35 that because Kezia had ended up in tearing off the wonderful speech written by her father into tiny pieces just to fill in the pin cushion she was preparing, she got punished by her father, where he had hit her on her little pink palms with ruler, just so that she could learn a lesson that she should not be touching something which does not belong to her. So let us see what happens after that. Now we start from paragraph number 8. Sorry, it was the end of paragraph number 7 earlier. Hours later, when grandmother had wrapped her in a shawl and rocked her in a rocking chair, the child clung to her soft body. Now, what is the meaning of rocked in a rocking chair? See, you may remember a type of swinging chair, a type of chair whose bottoms are literally in the form of a swing. It is usually placed in a house for people to relax, usually for the old people. And she rocked her in the rocking chair means she actually tried to calm this child, because obviously she was punished. And while the child clung onto the soft body of the grandmother, she kept on holding her tightly. "What did God make fathers for?" she sobbed. "Here's a clean hanky, darling. Blow your nose. Go to sleep, pet. You'll forget all about it in the morning. I tried to explain to father, but he was too upset to listen tonight." Now that child who was punished by her father seems to be for the first time, she had a question, like every child does, and maybe she was being a little bit immature, but after all she was a child. What did God make fathers for? So why do you think she asked this question? If you ask me, I think she asked this question because as she had been punished, she thought that why are God fathers there? To terrify us, to punish us? Is that why God made fathers to us? And the grandmother realized that situation very well. So she instead tried to change the mind, or shall I say change her thought, by saying that take a clean hanky, blow your nose. I tried to talk to father, but he was not at all in a mood to listen tonight. So you don't worry, you just blow your nose, you go to sleep, you don't worry about it. But and she also suggested that she would all forget it in the morning. But the child never forgot. Next time she saw him, she quickly put both hands behind her back and a red color flew into her cheeks. So what had this actually resulted in? Now she was much more scared of her father. Earlier she only used to stutter, if you remember. But now whenever she saw her father, whenever she encountered him at the house, she used to put both of the hands behind her back and there used to be a red color flowing into her cheeks, which meant that she was now much more scared. I think somewhere or the other, the presence of the father reminded her of the humiliation she had faced, that was being punished. The McDonalds lived next door. Okay, please do not get confused. This is the surname McDonald's. It has nothing to do with the very famous chain which all of you love. So we are talking about the family of McDonalds. The McDonalds lived next door. They had 5 children. Looking through a gap in the fence, the little girl saw them playing tag in the evening. Now see, the meaning of tag has been given here. It's a children's game of catching one another. I think all of us would have played tag at one point of time or the other. The father with the baby Mao on his shoulders, 2 little girls hanging onto his coat pockets, ran round and round the flower beds, shaking with laughter. So they used to play. So Mr. MacDonald, along with 5 of his children, they used to play in the evening. Once she saw the boys turn the hose on him and he tried to catch them laughing all the time. See, the whole description, or shall I say the pictorial representation, is given in page number 36, students. If it's visible, you can check it out on page number 36 as well. And it was, what do you think it actually represents? So somewhere or the other, this was a different sort of a family. Not the type of family where Kezia was born into or was living into. Then she decided there were different sorts of fathers. So now the girl was very sure of one thing, that no, she was wrong in assuming that fathers are only for beating and shouting and scolding. There are different types of fathers. There is also a type of father who plays with their children, who laughs with them, who plays tag with them, asks them to sit on the shoulders and all. Suddenly one day, mother became ill and she and grandmother went to hospital. Now here she refers to the mother. Alright, so please do not get confused. The little girl was left alone in the house with Alice the cook. Here comes the next character, Alice. Students, in the last class also I dealt with this matter. You must be wondering why I have written all of these characters' name under major characters. See, when we talk about a long story or a novel, there are a few characters where focus is being placed. So they can be termed as, there can be bifurcations like major characters or supporting characters. But when we talk about something like that of a short story, like what Katherine Mansfield has written, each and every character has a very important role to play. Because in a short story, a writer tends to consolidate all of those feelings, all of the nuances through various characters. So that is why she is also one of the major characters. Let's see how. So the little girl was left alone in the house with Alice the cook. That was all right in the daytime. But while Alice was putting her to bed, she grew suddenly afraid. In the daytime, every child is very happy, very energetic, jumping from one place to the other, very much hyper. But when it was night time, or shall I say for a child when it is evening time, when she was being put to bed by Alice, she grew suddenly afraid. So Kezia was not afraid. Why? What will I do if I have a nightmare? She asked. I often have nightmares and then Granny takes me into her bed. I can't stay in the dark. It all gets whispery. So what did she say now? She said, what will happen if I have a bad dream, if I have a nightmare? Because I tend to have nightmares all the time. And when I have a nightmare, I become very scared. And then Granny, that is grandmother, she takes me to her bed. I cannot sleep like that. It all gets so whispery. So it is actually the part of, you may say, an active imagination of a child. We also used to be scared of a lot of things when we were kids, like darkness. I think a lot of us actually did not allow our parents to switch off the lights for the fear that I think something or the other aa jayega. I think the Babadook was a similar sort of a nightmarish creature. You just go to sleep, child, said Alice, pulling off her socks. And don't you scream and wake your poor pa. Now what did Alice say? She has a different perspective related to Kezia's father. Now you may think that Alice is an adult, so she may actually say something like that, but she was also not part of the family. When her grandmother was trying to explain or someone else was explaining, then we can assume that okay, father is the bread earner, so maybe they are supporting him. But Alice, who was just a cook, who was only employed under the father, she said, now you don't think so much, you go to sleep and don't scream and wake up your poor pa. So somewhere or the other, she had a different perspective of the person Kezia's father was as compared to what Kezia thought of him as, because Kezia definitely thought of him as giant. But the same old nightmare came. The butcher with a knife and a rope. What is the meaning of a butcher? A butcher is someone who actually cuts meat. A dangerous creature. A person, according to a child. With a knife and a rope, who came nearer and nearer, smiling that dreadful smile, while she could not move, could only stand still, crying out, "Grandma, Grandma!" So this was the same nightmare she used to have, where she saw a butcher with a knife and a rope walking towards her, and he would be having a dreadful smile on his face, and then she would be so very scared, Kezia would be so very scared that she would just freeze there and start shouting, "Grandma, Grandma." So it seems that she shouted again. Why? She woke, shivering to see father beside her bed, a candle in his hand. So again that nightmare had happened, and again that child had actually started crying out, "Grandma, Grandma." But this time when she woke up, shivering in fear of that boogeyman, or shall I say the butcher of from a nightmare, what did she find? There was a different person. It was the father. And how was he there? He was there holding a candle in his hand. "What's the matter?" he said. "Oh, a butcher, a knife, I want Granny." He blew out the candle, bent down and caught up the child in his arms, carrying her along the passage to the big bedroom. So she started mumbling, "The butcher, the knife, I want Granny." And what did the man do? The father do? He blew out the candle, bent down, picked up the child in his arms and took her to the big bedroom. That means maybe her parents' room. A newspaper was on the bed. He put away the paper, then carefully tucked up the child. What is the meaning of tucking up? Wrapping her very nicely, very tightly under the blankets. He lay down beside her. And he tucked her in and he lay down beside her. Half asleep still with the butcher's smile all about her it seemed, she crept close to him, snuggled her head under his arm and held tightly to his shirt. And Kezia was still half asleep. She was semi-conscious. She was half asleep, half mumbling. So still that she was scared. And she was still having that vision of the butcher with his deadly smile. She crept closer to the father, snuggled under his arms and held his shirt tightly. Then the dark did not matter. She lay still. Students, this is a very important line. Then the dark did not matter. If there's a suggestion to all of you before you actually start watching any video. There are two things I think you should always do. First thing first, you should keep the chapter or the book by your side with a pencil or a pen. You should always wear earphones, students, because otherwise it won't be easy for you to understand and to go through what we have been discussing. So kindly put your earphones, and when some important point is being discussed, kindly underline. And I would also suggest if you can make some notes for your practice copy. It will be easier for you to understand any chapter. So, this is a very important line. Why? Then the dark did not matter. Remember the girl when Alice was making her sleep and she said, "In the dark it gets all whispery." She was scared that something would happen to her in the dark. But now when she was snuggled to her father, then the dark did not matter. Now she was not fearful of that unknown darkness around her. "Here, rub your feet against my legs and get them warm." Now the father said, and see, this is exactly how parents are. She did not utter a single word. All she did was just clutching tightly, and she was snuggling close to her father. And the father somehow understood that the child needs some time to calm down. And what did he say? "Here, rub your feet against my leg and made them warm. He thought that the child may, because she was shivering due to fear and maybe a little bit due to cold. So he suggested, rub up your legs on my, your feet on my legs and make them warm. Don't worry. Tired out, he slept before the little girl. And the man was so tired. Before the little girl could actually go into the deep sleep, the father had already slept, fallen asleep. A funny feeling came over her. Poor father, not so big after all, and with no one to look after him. He was harder than grandmother, but it was a nice hardness. Now see, the feeling of the girl is now changing. She is softening towards her own father. And how is she doing so? A funny feeling came to her. That poor father, not so big after all, and there is no one to look after him. Yes, his body is a bit harder, but not like grandmother. Remember, she was saying that she clung to the soft body of the grandmother. Fathers are obviously differently built. So she said that he was harder than grandmother. It was a nice, safe sort of an embrace for her, safe sort of an environment for her to feel very much safe and to feel very much secure. And every day he had to work and was too tired to be a Mr. MacDonald. She had torn up all his beautiful writing. She stirred suddenly and sighed. And now she realized why father was the way he was with her. He said that he has to work all day. And he's so tired from his work that he has slept before me. And because there is no one to take care of this man. And because he's so very tired, he does not even have the energy left to be a Mr. MacDonald and run after me and play with me. And she stirred a little bit and sighed, had a deep sort of a sigh of understanding. What's the matter? Asked her father. Another dream. Now when the girl, see how much the father was attuned to the child's slightest of movements, that when she stirred, he asked, what happened? Another dream? Oh, said the little girl, my head's on your heart. I can hear it going. What a big heart you have got, father dear. Okay, this is the most emotional line in this whole chapter. And she said, oh, my head is on your heart. I have laid my head on your heart and I can hear it going. That means she could hear the heartbeat. What a big heart you have got, father dear. Here, big heart refers to multiple meanings. First is, she is referring to the size because obviously she was so small, she was tiny as compared to her father's personality. So there is one thing that what a big heart you have got, that I can hear its sound when I have put my ear over your chest. And the other one is, having a big heart, what is the rhetorical meaning you think? The rhetorical meaning can be, if a person is supposed to have a big heart, it means that a person is so much filled with love and so much filled with compassion towards people that they forget the gravest of mistakes. So maybe she was saying this as remembering how she had actually torn up the wonderful writing of her father, and still when she needed, the father was there with her. So what a big heart he had got, that he was still filled with so much of love. So again, that comes back to the same discussion we had last time, and that was, our mothers are very much crystal clear, they are very much transparent when it comes to expressing their feelings. You feel bad and your mother will be sadder than you. If you are sick, your mother will keep on waking the whole night. But who does sit with your mother, your father? They are not that transparent. They are a bit tougher. Maybe we can call them tougher. I don't know why, but they seem to be tougher. And maybe because of the fact that they don't express themselves, or shall I say, express their love, the feelings, express the compassion as freely as mothers do. But this little girl, she got a lesson that the giant of a father she thought was so very scary, and she was regretting why our father's there for. At the end, she definitely realized the reason of a father's indifferent, or shall I say, a bit of a strict behavior. She realized that he was so very busy that he wanted a little bit of understanding from the family itself. So yes, the little girl finally realized, and I don't think she is that little anymore, because mentally she has grown a little bit more. That's all for this chapter, students. Hope the chapter, because I personally love this chapter, so I hope that you all will love this chapter as well as were able to understand it in a much more proper manner, in a much more considerate manner, if you ask me. So that's all for this class, students. Thank you so much.